Ladies and gentlemen, colleagues from around the world, it's wonderful to greet you today. And on behalf of the United Nations Institute for Training and Research and the Global Surgery Foundation, I welcome you to this special event, the Grand Rounds Surgical Training. Is digital tech here to stay? My name is Dr. Jeff Ibbotson. I'm a general surgeon and the executive director of the Global Surgery Foundation. And it's my pleasure to welcome you all to this special event. The title actually, Is Digital Tech Here to Stay, is an interesting one because over the last 2 years, we've seen through the COVID pandemic how important digital technology is for training and so many aspects of life. And this session today is going to dive deep into some of the opportunities that lay ahead of us and what we have learned through this pandemic. So I'm very excited to see the presentations. And once again, a very warm welcome from UNITAR and the GSF to all of those participating today. I'd like to now turn it over to Nefti Bempong Ahun, who is going to be our moderator. We're very pleased to have Nefti as part of the GSF team. She brings a lot of energy and enthusiasm, and I'm very pleased to have her as our moderator today. So Nefti, the floor is yours. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Welcome everyone once again to the Grand Rounds, and that we're having in collaboration today with the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, the Institute of Global Surgery. So welcome. To start off, we'll be having a welcoming address from Mr. Nikhil Seth. So he's the Executive Director of UNITAR and also the United Nations Assistant Secretary General. So we'll be glad to hear from him first before we move into our fun-packed program for today. We can see we've got COSECA's online program and e-learning. We're going to learn about the potential of using virtual reality as a tool for training, and then some e-learning opportunities specifically for the cleft professionals globally. And then we'll be also hearing about the United Nations Global Surgery Learning Hub. So welcome and thank you once again.
Distinguished speakers and colleagues and esteemed guests from around the world. On behalf of our team at the United Nations Institute for Training and Research and the Global Surgery Foundation, I'm glad to speak at this important event addressing the future of surgical training. We know that equitable access to safe and affordable surgical services is essential for achieving universal health coverage and the Sustainable Development Goals. Almost 1/3 of the global disease burden is surgical, yet over 5 billion of the world's population lack access to safe and effective surgical care. The development of the existing and future surgical care workforce is fundamental to increasing access to safe surgical care worldwide, an important key to unlocking the enormous potential in low and middle income countries. To this end, I am glad to announce that UNITAR, together with the Global Surgery Foundation and RCSI, is working to establish the United Nations Global Surgery Learning Hub. This new hub will utilize the lessons learned through the pandemic about how innovative digital technologies can bridge the gap in the delivery of education and training. Our hub will provide easy online access to education and training opportunities. It will target all cadres involved in the delivery of surgical care, as well as relevant stakeholders in research, policy, academia, and industry. Building on the expertise of UNITAR and our partners, it is being developed to be highly user-friendly and to offer quality curated content. I would like to extend an invitation to interested institutions to become part of the UN Global Surgery Learning Hub in establishing a highly consultative process with our partners from the onset. We hope that this hub will become the go-to resource for global surgery educational material, a streamlined platform available for those who need it most. Access to surgery care has been long neglected in our global efforts to end human suffering. Knowledge and its transfer through education and training is essential if we are to make a sustainable difference in people's lives. Only with a workforce equipped with the right skills can we move towards our vision. Surgery for all who need it, when they need it, and wherever they need it. I believe that with the UN Global Surgery Learning Hub, we have a great opportunity to streamline existing and new educational materials for global surgery under the trusted banner of the United Nations. I hope that you will join us in this effort, and I look forward to working with you. Thank you very much.
All right, so welcome everybody. To start off, we'll be hearing about e-learning and kind of its key attributes and how to use this in surgical training. I'm really pleased that we'll be hearing from two of our colleagues in Kenya today. Dr. Andrea Park, she's a consultant surgeon and the assistant program director at Tenwick Hospital in Kenya. And we'll also be hearing from a current trainee, Dr. Mercy Mutai. She's a general surgery resident who has been using the COSECA platform and will tell us about her experience as well. So I'll hand over to Dr. Andrea, and it's a pleasure to have you. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you very much for the opportunity to present today about something that is incredibly important to me. I've titled my talk, Embracing Digital Technology for Surgical Education, the COSECA Curriculum Experience. So this is a normal world map with a flat projection, and it looks a bit skewed simply because of the projection. And the circled portions that you see in the red colored countries is sub-Saharan Africa. This is the same map, but with the countries distorted to reflect the number of physicians per capita in each country. So you can see that the United States and Europe and China just explode, but sub-Saharan Africa nearly disappears. And this is perhaps even more disturbing if we look now at simply the global burden of disease as compared to the medical and surgical workforce. And these maps would look virtually identical if we looked only at surgical burden of disease and surgical workforce. And increasingly, it's become apparent that it is impossible to close this access gap or to even make significant strides toward improving patient access to surgical care without increasing the surgical workforce. And this requires large-scale training initiatives and surgical education programs. This is a picture of our surgical residency program here in Kenya a couple of years ago, and we are under the banner of COSECA. So the College of Surgeons of East, Central, and Southern Africa, or COSECA, is the largest surgical training institution in sub-Saharan Africa, with surgical training programs in 14 member and 5 affiliate countries, and with a focus on training surgeons for rural areas. So in 2017, the COSECA Education and Examinations Committees recognized a lack of standardized curriculum as an area of need for COSECA. So historically, and to that point, all of the decisions, or most of the decisions about specific curriculum topics or teaching methods had been left to individual programs, program directors, and faculty. And it was felt that this was an area where we could really improve the uniformity and the quality of surgical training. So to help explain why I'm so passionate about the use of digital technology in surgical training, I want to discuss a little bit about our experience with COSECA curriculum development. Because the lessons that I've learned through this process in the last several years have informed my own thoughts on the role and the importance of digital technology in surgical education in low and middle income countries. In 2018, we undertook a needs assessment, and that involved 20 structured interviews and focus groups involving 60 educators and learners across 5 countries. And out of that came the 7 findings that you see listed here, which really helped to identify the needs and the resources in our region. And most importantly for this discussion are the 3 that I have circled here. So the first is that curricula and textbooks are often inaccessible to those in low and middle income countries. And when they are accessible, they're typically expensive, often prohibitively so. The second is that there are limited surgical faculty at any program, and that often means that there are maybe only 2 to 3 surgeons leading a training program, and they're responsible for the clinical work the administrative work, as well as the educational work. And third, we found that both faculty and trainees thought that online resources were a suitable and even a desirable way for content delivery. Importantly, learners within COSEXA training programs already used an online learning platform, School for Surgeons, which our next speaker will discuss a little bit more about. And the familiarity with this learning system really allowed us to kind of consider virtual platforms as an option for content delivery. So through the experience of developing this curriculum, I've come to firmly believe that digital technology in surgical education is here to stay. But I would go a step further and say that I really believe that we should embrace it for at least 3 important reasons, which I've labeled preferences, practices, and practicalities. And I want to go through each of those just briefly here. The first is preferences. So research coming out of the COVID pandemic shows a strong preference for online learning and a decreased desire for 100% classroom-based learning. Interestingly, we found the same in our needs assessment even pre-COVID. So I don't think that this is entirely a COVID pandemic phenomenon, but I think this reflects the changing needs and desires of learners. What's important, though, is that learners continue to want in-person discussion, and this became very clear during the COVID pandemic. They desire interaction with educators and peers. And so a hybrid approach that pairs digital media with a more traditional in-person session with other learners and an instructor, or what we refer to as blended learning, really seems optimal. Additionally, the use of digital technology fosters open access and collaboration, and this seems to be increasingly important to learners. Learners note the importance of drawing together groups from abroad and other collaborations that simply would not happen without the use of digital technology. So we could even point to this grand rounds as a perfect example of what I'm talking about. Digital learning allows for flexibility in learning, and that really helps with work-life balance and autonomy. Interestingly, these forms of learning actually seem to require less time than traditional forms of learning, probably because learners can move at their own pace. So just for an easy example, learners could watch a video at 1.5 to 2 times its normal speed, and you can't usually do that with a lecturer. A learner can spend more time on the content that is new or unfamiliar with them, or that they're having more difficulty understanding, and then spend less time on material that's familiar or that they already know. From a faculty perspective, creating our own digital curriculum has offloaded work tremendously for faculty. So rather than a trainer having to prepare a lecture or maybe a few lectures each week, we provide optional teaching materials in the form of prompts and answers. And this really decreases the time investment necessary to prepare for preparation. Further, as I'll discuss in just a moment, learners come prepared. And that makes for more engaged learners and an overall more enjoyable teaching environment. So given that this reflects the preferences of both trainees and trainers, it seems likely that digital technology will continue to be an essential part of surgical training. So the second aspect is that of incorporating best educational practices. So current best educational practices involve strategies that engage learners and encourage an active approach to learning. And many of these more engaging strategies are actually easier with digital technology. So for instance, using a virtual platform allowed us to design a flipped classroom setup where learners complete an online module in preparation for an in-person learning time. And this isn't only more consistent with the preferences of learners, as we discussed just a minute ago, but it allows that time together in the group to be spent on strategies that promote active learning. And this is things like case-based discussions or low-fidelity simulation exercises, game-based learning, debates, and problem-solving activities. Within the modules, the online modules themselves, we've been able to incorporate interactive multimedia elements and frequent low-stakes assessments and recall exercises, which our next speaker again will discuss. And importantly, the data supporting such strategies to promote active learning in undergraduate and graduate medical education is well established. Evidence-based benefits include increased higher order thinking skills, so things like problem solving and critical thinking. These strategies that are geared toward active learning have been shown to increase learner engagement, and that increases information retention and gives a deeper understanding of presented material. These strategies improve teamwork and group or peer collaboration, and they increase the use of evidence-based medicine. So while learner preferences are certainly important, it is more important that our educational methods be data-driven. But I think it's really exciting when we can accomplish both of these goals. And finally, some of the most important benefits of virtual platforms are practical issues. So first, making use of digital technologies allows us to decrease the need to ship textbooks over a massive geographical area and then replace those textbooks every time a new edition becomes available. Further, digital platforms allow material to be updated easily and frequently. And I think that this is important for a couple of reasons. The first is that this has allowed us to respond to user feedback in almost real time. So we can make updates in response to the feedback that we get. And we've been able to do that over these past couple of years. Further, content can be updated as new data emerges and as medical knowledge changes. And that keeps the content current and relevant. And I think that this is especially important as medical knowledge is just increasing exponentially. E-learning has been vital in accomplishing our goals for curriculum development. Obviously, in 2017, we never could have anticipated the role that virtual platforms would play during the COVID pandemic, even as we had already begun to consider these for delivery of surgical curriculum. COVID forced us all to pivot to virtual technology, but this has accelerated the acceptability of and the comfort with digital learning for both trainees and trainers. So I think we find ourselves with this extraordinary opportunity to reimagine surgical education, embracing digital technology and its benefits to better serve learner preferences, to incorporate best educational practices, and to address important practicalities. Digital technology can and is revolutionizing surgical education in low and middle income countries. And I hope and believe that it is here to stay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for that, Dr. Andrea. And next we'll be hearing also from Dr. Mercy Matish. She's the general surgery resident at Tenwek Hospital in Kenya. So she'll be telling us a bit more about the user experience and the platform itself. So Dr. Mercy, the floor is yours. Thank you so much. Mercy, are you okay?
Greetings, and thank you for that kind introduction. I'm currently in my third year of residency, and it's truly an honor to be in this forum to give a trainee's perspective on the use of digital technology for surgical training. I'll talk about our experience in using the online surgical curriculum platform called the School for Surgeons. So the School for Surgeons is an online platform for surgical curriculum. It is based on our standard textbook, and it is divided into easy-to-use modules, and displayed on the slide is the School for Surgeons homepage. And as you can see, it has easy-to-use navigation panels to the specific content. Each week, each resident has modular content to complete, and each module starts with a pretest that assesses the depth of knowledge of a resident in that specific topic. And it also has a post-test that one must pass before moving on to the next module. In Tenwek, we use a flipped classroom model where one goes through the content individually, and then we come together as a group for a discussion. And attached on the photo is some of the Tenwek residents during such a group discussion. And as you can see, most of them have an electronic device that they're using as a reference point for the discussion. There are several advantages offered by the online platform compared to the traditional method of using a textbook. And one of the main advantages is the fact that the content is presented in a simplified manner. Compared to reading a 2,000-page surgical textbook that can be dense and sometimes very daunting to read, the module has subdivided very complex topics into easy-to-read subtopics. The online platform also offers a cheap alternative for us students, alternative to expensive surgical texts. For example, in Kenya, the recommended book for our surgical training retails at about $300. But with the use of this platform, we are not required to incur such a cost. And this is a key benefit of such a platform. One might wonder if we had to incur additional cost in getting devices that are able to, that we can use on the platform. But more beneficial is that this platform has, the software is very versatile and very accessible, and it can be used in a variety of phones, laptops, and even tablets. And actually in Tenwek, it's very common to see most residents using their Android mobile phones to access this platform. One of my favorite features of this platform is the use of audiovisual aids. I find that as a resident, I learn the content better when it has accompanying videos or diagrams. And shown on this slide is an explanation of cardiogenic shock with an accompanying video to illustrate the difference between a normally contracting heart with a poorly contracting heart. The video makes it easy for really something that you cannot find in any of the textbooks. Students often get bored when they're reading material that is new or challenging. And traditionally, some students would use either a highlight or a marker pen and go over the same content over and over again in an effort to grasp that content. But unfortunately, this never works or rarely works. But one of the things I love about the School for Surgeons is how they based learning methods, including the recall technique. Here on the screen, we see two examples. One of it is using the knowledge checks and also mini clinical scenario to allow the learner to pause and try to recall what you have just read. And this effort makes one be able to cement and better understand the content. Different students learn differently. And I like the fact that the modules can be customized or personalized in a way that makes sense to each student. I remember when I was starting my residency, Dr. Andrea Parker, who is here with us today, gave us a talk about effective learning methods. And one of the strategies she talked about was using the recall technique. And when I was in my second year of study and preparing for my end of second year exams, I decided to put this method to test using the modules themselves. So what I would do is do the pretest, go forward and do the content, but then defer the post-test until a later time. And then when I would log on, I would be required to complete the post-test before moving on to a new module. This part of deferring the post-test until a later time would enable me to practice good recall and be able to cement the concepts in my memory. Additionally, in this platform, you can also track your progress, see which modules you've done well, which modules you still need to revise, and how much time you have left. Another advantage is the fact that we could give feedback on this platform to the developers and improve the areas that we thought needed improvement. One of these attached on the slide is a sample of the feedback survey form. And when we were doing it in Tenwek, interestingly, most of us found that the use of audiovisual aids in the platform was most helpful. The use of an online platform, however, has not been without challenges. And one of the most notable challenges across the board in sub-Saharan Africa is a stable internet connection. There were instances that we were not able to finish our module on time because of internet connectivity issues. Nonetheless, during the recent COVID pandemic, we were able to online nature of the curriculum. So in conclusion, as a trainee, I have seen technology has afforded surgical training. It has made our learning cheaper, more accessible, more personalized, and even up to date. And to just answer the thematic question for today, I believe that and there are even new horizons to be conquered in sub-Saharan Africa. Attached on this slide is a photo of my class during a hernia workshop, and we were using crafts to simulate hernia anatomy. And it would be amazing and very interesting for us as trainees to see us using digital technology, not only in acquisition of knowledge, but in acquisition of skill as well. And in this area, we would use things like 3D animations to learn skills and anatomy very well. And this would be our new frontier in as trainees in sub-Saharan Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Dr. Mercy, and thank you for sharing your experience, especially as a surgical trainee. So for right now, I encourage our participants to leave some questions in the Q&A box. Our panelists will be able to answer them there, and we'll also be having questions on the second part of this webinar today. So thank you very much, Dr. Andrea Parker, and also Dr. Mercy Miti, for sharing your experience and telling us about the GSECA online surgical program. So next we'll be having Dr. Julie Rhodes. She's joining us as a visiting researcher at the Global Oncology Group at the Institute of Cancer Policy at King's College London. She'll be talking about virtual reality as a tool for surgical training, and she'll be also sharing some of the user experience from the Ministry of Health in Zambia. So Julie, I'll turn over to you and looking forward to hearing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, and thank you to Global Surgery Foundation, UNITAR and RCSI for the kind invitation to join this session. I am foremost a global cancer advocate. I'm not a surgeon, so I disclose that right at the beginning. And I'll introduce my co-host, Dr. Arnold Sakalaka, who unfortunately won't be contributing today, but he will be making a testimonial, and so look out for that on the follow-up materials on the website. So when we think about surgery for cancer, it's the World Health Organization Global Action Plan on Non-Communicable Diseases, which ran from 2013 to 2020, which really shapes the global policy dialogue on cancer prevention and control. So back in 2012, we advocates fought hard to secure the 80% access to essential medicines and technologies target, one of only 9 targets in this plan. But you may be surprised to know that the document does not contain the word surgery at all. Quite shocking. While there was a bit of catch up a couple of years later in the appendix, which described the best buys, that is the recommended priority actions based on cost effectiveness for countries. This at least referred to early detection and treatment of high burden cancers like breast, cervical and colorectal cancers. But I think it shows it's a general lack of recognition of the pivotal role of cancer surgery. And they really only got caught up on the global stage in the 2017 cancer resolution. So this is why at King's College London, we're really focused on scaling the global capacity and capability on cancer surgery. Why is that important? Well, affordable and safe surgery is essential for cancer in all resource settings. Approximately 80% of all people diagnosed with cancer every year will require surgery, and some several times. So this knowledge gap was really addressed by the global commissions, the Global Cancer Surgery Commission and the Global Surgery Commissions, which really came out in around 2015. What they were able to show is that by 2030, that's just in 8 years' time, there will be a need for 45 million cancer surgical procedures every year globally. This is majorly at odds with the current systems, where less than 25% of patients with cancer worldwide actually get safe, affordable, timely surgery. So if you can think past these statistics and the suffering that they imply, the Commission also articulated the economic impact. And this is a direct quote from the co-chair of the Cancer Commission, Professor Sullivan, who said the failure to train more cancer surgeons and strengthen systems could result in as much as $6.2 trillion in lost cumulative GDP. That's 6.2 with 13 zeros after it, if you're wondering what a trillion means. And of course, this statement was made before the COVID pandemic, which we know has hit surgery services and cancer surgery services very hard. So that's the challenge articulated. What about the solution? Well, the solution is investing in human capital, as I'm sure we're all aware, but not business as usual. The way we've been training in low middle income countries is just way too slow. So what we were able to find from the Commission, who modelled the workforce gap, is that by 2030, we're looking at a gap of 280,000 surgery and anesthesiology personnel. And critically, this gap is most pressing in low-income countries. So the solution is investing in that human capital, as I said. We need WHO leadership, which is absolutely critical. And we need global funders to orientate or reorientate to an implementation science-based approach to building surgical capacity. But most importantly, the surgery and cancer community also need to take a fresh perspective. We need to have a sense of urgency into solving this problem by 2030, and we need innovative ways to fill that gap. So in the remaining slides, I'll give you a short teaser into one such out-of-the-box solution, virtual surgery simulation, which we are focusing on women's cancers, which are the cancers with the highest burden in low middle income countries. So the hypothesis is that by stimulating multiple regions of the brain associated with cognition, emotion, and senses, we get a deeper and faster and more lasting learning. We can achieve this via an interactive experience in a computer simulated environment, and it's really effective for learning complex procedural tasks. So our first question was, can low-cost virtual reality surgical oncology simulation be developed and function well in lower resource settings? Well, I'll go ahead and answer that right away with a yes, we can. From the start, we wanted a system that used off-the-shelf equipment, the gaming headset, standard PC, gaming card. Well, this is really with sustainability in mind. And we're really seeing that benefit already. The equipment cost at the time of this study was $1,500, but we're seeing costs fall and we're able to take advantage of those. And we don't have to worry about complex equipment that risks becoming out of date in what is a very dynamic field. Our second question was, can surgical trainees learn a complex surgical oncology procedure using the low-cost virtual reality system? And the example we chose was radical abdominal hysterectomy for invasive cervical cancer. Well, why did we choose that cancer? It's one of the highest killers of women, 4th ranking in the world, but actually one of the number 1 cancer killer in most of sub-Saharan Africa. But in fact, more than 50% of women with early stage invasive cervical cancer can be cured just with surgery alone. But radical abdominal hysterectomy is not accessible in most resource-constrained settings. So really, we wanted to introduce new skills that could start saving women's lives immediately. So in this next slide, this person has put this equipment on for the very first time. You can see how quickly he's able to orientate himself in the virtual room, already starting to use this to point to different equipment. And I like it how long it takes to look down and actually see there's a patient in the room. The next set of slides are the virtual sessions. This is a student using this equipment for the first time. Note how the selection of instruments and placement times are quite slow. What you may, sorry, I'm in the wrong place. You can see it's very easy to start to use the system. In the next slide, this is the start of session 3. And I think you noticed already There's much more speed and efficiency, confidence in carrying out the procedure. You can also hear the noise in the background, I hope. The noise of the operating theatre, the monitors in the background. But what they also have is a mentor sitting on your shoulder, and that voice is Professor Groesbeck-Parham, giving direction. And anyone who knows Groesbeck, you don't want to disappoint him. So it's a good focus to have that mentor right beside you. And this is where the gaming feature comes in. Each student has their own dashboard. In addition to the overall time for the full procedure, they're able to see the breakdown of the individual steps and work towards goals, personal goals for each of those. Learning is rapid, and you can see by that session 3, significant increases in efficiency in some of the procedures, whereas others take a little bit more time on the VR system. Looking at the whole cohort, you can see that the students made improvements across the training period, all students, but though some improved better than others, there's a format that suits some more than others. And while I don't have time to show you all of the data that we have, what I can say is there's a high retention of these skills. And even when students rotated to another ward and then came back to the system, they showed retention of those skills, which is so important. So in summary, the simulation can be managed to use technical resources available in low middle income settings. The amount of training on the virtual reality system is highly predictive of the accuracy of that procedure in the virtual sense. And impact of training is retained despite even longer breaks in training. So what are our next steps? Well, the first one is obvious. Can we evaluate the use of the radical abdominal hysterectomy virtual reality simulator to determine if enhanced skills really do translate then into enhanced skills in the surgery theatre itself? And we have done that work, and I can say, yes, the study's complete and the data are very exciting. I'm sadly not able to show you those today. It's just not quite ready, but look to see those very soon. We're also seeking funding to look beyond radical abdominal hysterectomy in 2 ways. 1, can we expand to new surgical techniques? And 2, can we expand to additional, to really translate skills from one centre to another? In the cancer field, in lower income settings, we're really looking at countries with only one cancer centre in many cases. So we're looking to see if we can use that skill set in Lusaka Cancer Diseases Hospital in Zambia to try and start to build surgical capacity in Livingstone and in Ndola. So I will leave you with a quote from the gentleman on the far right-hand side. That's Groesbeck-Parham, who I already mentioned, who said, using virtual reality surgical simulation has been a game changer, training surgeons in complex pelvic surgery for cancer and other conditions, and really building true capacity for cancer surgery, cancers of excellence for women's cancers. And here is the list of people that worked on that study across Dallas, London, and Lusaka, and it was funded by the Medical Research Council. So I hope I gave you a little taster of what virtual reality can do, and back to you, Nefti.
Thank you so much, Judy, much appreciated, and lots to learn, and really a lot of potential for virtual reality as a tool, especially for surgical training. So that was great to see. So moving on, next we have 2 speakers from Smile Train, and they'll be telling us about e-learning opportunities, specifically on cleft professionals globally. So I'm really pleased to introduce Dr. Esther Nyogoro-Murithi. She's the Senior VP of Global Medical Programs for Smile Train. So Dr. Esther, the floor is yours, and thank you very much. And thank you also, Judy, again. Could you just unmute, Judy, please? Thank you mute, sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Nefti, and thank you, everybody. It's a pleasure to be with you this afternoon. It's early evening for me here in Kenya. And next slide, please. We want to share with you a little bit of what we have been doing at Smile Train. We know that every 3 minutes, a baby is born with a cleft somewhere in the world, even during a pandemic, even during war. And we also know that many of these children struggle to feed, they struggle to access the care they need, and some will be left out of their contributing to their communities and their economies if they do not access the care that they need. And so Smile Train has been working tirelessly to support these children by partnering with hospitals and medical professionals and supporting them with funding, training, and capacity building to enable them to treat children in their own communities. Next slide, please. And through these efforts, we have achieved the milestones that you see on screen and much, much more. And yet we still have a lot more to do to reach every child who is being born with a cleft somewhere in the world. So Smile Train's unique model of partnering with local medical professionals necessitated finding innovative ways of reaching the communities we support, be it families affected by cleft or medical professionals who are seeking to improve care for their patients. Naturally, we turn to technology, thanks to our founder, the late Charles B. Wang, who was a tech guy. And so for the last 22 years, Smile Train has created online learning resources for surgery, for speech therapy, orthodontics, nutrition, and even anesthesia. When COVID-19 pandemic hit, we quickly pivoted all our learning and leveraged the already existing infrastructure to avail lectures and learning opportunities online. A good example is a telecleft series in Africa, which COSEXA and West Africa College of Surgeons have been a part of. And this allowed medical students to access training from the comfort of their living rooms. And my colleague Kimi will elaborate a little further on how these online opportunities have worked in her region. Next slide. So I want to just focus on one particular digital learning resource, largely because I know our audience today is predominantly surgeons and surgical residents, but also because it's one of the most exciting innovations at Smile Train. In 2003, just a few years after Smile Train was formed, in partnership with Dr. Cott Cutting and Aaron Olika, Smile Train developed a DVD that was distributed to partners. Over 40,000 copies of that DVD was distributed, and it was such a hit that some surgeons still ask for the DVD to date. Well, I'm not sure how many of those in the audience who are students even have a DVD player in their homes. So that is out of circulation. 10 years later, we partnered with Biodigital Human and developed a 3D simulated training, the Smile Train Virtual Surgery Simulator. So when Julie said about the virtual surgery simulator, I smiled because it's exactly what we have done for the last 10 years. It is an open resource and it's available online freely to anybody. And through this, it's interactive. It has questions, it has quizzes, it has embedded real videos, and it takes a student step by step, be it a unilateral, bilateral, or a cleft palate treatment, all the way from the anatomy to the repair. And a few years later, the simulator was optimized for mobile use. And so we have it accessible on App Store and Google Store, and again, freely downloadable. And with that, you're able to access it even without internet. And this last step has helped us to reach populations that have internet challenges. I saw a question about internet in the chat. In 2020, Smile Train acquired the Similar Medical Company, a Canadian company, which produces 3D printed physical hyper-realistic simulators. And this tech has been a game changer in the training landscape because it has shifted the risk away from practicing on the child to a model that can afford to be cut wrong and stitched wrong and then corrected. So what is next, you may ask? And at the moment, we are exploring virtual reality. I really enjoyed Julie's talk, looking to optimize the Smile Train Virtual Surgery Simulator for cutting-edge technology that allows for real-time virtual training while the trainer and trainee are miles apart. It also allows for self-paced, realistic training that a trainee can be guided by the trainer and pause and continue at their own pace. And therefore, next slide, please. At the core of Smile Train's programs is a belief that if you give a man fish, you'll feed him for a day. But if you teach him how to fish, you will feed him for a lifetime. Next slide. And so we are moving away from giving fish to teaching how to fish and going a step further and providing the fishing rod to the trainees and the trainers in our network. And that is a Smile Train way. And so for now, I will hand over to my colleague, Kimi, from the Philippines, to share her experience in the Southeast Asia, which is an example of how our partners are clicking and learning from the comfort of their homes. Over to you, Kimi.
Thank you, Dr. Esther. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to everyone watching this session today. It is truly an honor to be here and share learnings from Smile Train's virtual learning opportunities done throughout the pandemic. My name is Kimi, and I look after Smile Train's work in Southeast Asia. At the risk of stating the obvious, I do want to start with the fact that all of our work, yours and ours, have been greatly affected by the COVID-19 pandemic. However, we have made a commitment to provide safe, quality, and timely care for patients who depend on us every day. As such, we pushed ourselves and looked for ways to serve the cleft community. By supporting and empowering local cleft teams, Smile Train, from the start of the pandemic, was able to support 144,000 cleft surgeries in more than 75 countries, more than 37,700 sessions of telehealth services for speech, nutrition, and psychosocial care for over 15,000 patients, create 150 plus patient education videos on comprehensive cleft care viewed over 170,000 times, and to zero in on our topic today, conduct more than 18,000 education and training sessions for over 29,000 medical professionals across 90 countries. An impact of this magnitude is something we cannot do alone. As such, we reached out and partnered with medical societies, universities, and advocates who shared their expertise and knowledge and provided credibility to the conferences we organized. Our partners promoted the conferences to their own members and network, increasing our reach substantially. This also meant that more people became aware of Smile Train's work in the communities. Some of the benefits we have seen: one, wider reach. Participants could access the sessions from wherever they were. It was more cost efficient as we did not have to fly in participants and speakers to attend the conferences in person. The cost of mounting a webinar is also significantly less than having in-person conferences. And three, we could invite world-renowned experts who could dial in from the comforts of their homes. As an example, in partnership with the Philippine Plastic Surgery Society, Smile Train supported the virtual attendance of plastic surgery residents to the Global Smile Foundation's comprehensive cleft care workshop held in Turkey last year. We organized a Step Down or ECHO conference where the residents shared their learnings and senior consultants provided feedback on their presentations. Smile Train's Global Medical Advisory Board member, Dr. Roberto Flores, who was a speaker at the GSF conference, also participated in this webinar from his home in New York. Another Smile Train Medical Advisory Board member, Dr. Alvaro Figueroa, who called in from Illinois, was a speaker at a cleft orthodontics webinar organized out of the Philippines. There were 500 registrants from more than 20 countries who watched and listened. Had these conferences been done in person, we cannot guarantee that they would be able to participate. The presence of well-respected professionals like Dr. Flores and Dr. Figueroa, and the opportunity for young professionals to dialogue with them was priceless. It was an energizing and inspiring experience for the participants. A component of the Cleft Orthodontics webinar was a workshop on nasoalveolar molding. Prior to the workshop, a workshop manual, molds, and kits were sent out to 30 participants across the Philippines. Then, a panel of trainers conducted the training virtually using a mix of lectures, videos, and online quizzes to facilitate learning. Participants were asked to follow the steps as described by the trainers and as seen on the videos. A few days ago, SmileTrain launched its bilateral cleft lip and palate simulator at the American Cleft Palate Association annual conference in Fort Worth, Texas. The workshop was led by Dr. Roberta Flores of NYU, a world-renowned plastic surgeon and leader in surgery simulation. This live session was streamed in 3 locations in the Philippines, Manila, Cebu, and Davao, where other plastic surgeons followed the workshop and performed surgery on the simulators. So to answer the question, yes, we do believe that online learning is here to stay. However, we recognize there are challenges we still need to address to ensure that participants actually learn from these sessions. There could be additional ways to supplement online learning to address some of these challenges and limitations. For example, as we organize various learning opportunities, we have seen that there are many things that require hands-on training. We have also seen participants have difficulty with access to the webinars as they may be in locations where internet connection may not be stable, or they are in locations where timing is not ideal. Even if recordings are available after the conferences, the limitation here is that they are not able to engage or ask their questions during the webinar. With online learning, we cannot guarantee that participants are focused or if they're multitasking while the conference is ongoing. In addition, most of the time, there are no provisions for simultaneous translations. Lastly, many participants are particular about receiving certificates for participating. However, it can be challenging to do as you cannot guarantee if they actually attended and if certifications are recognized in their countries or by the medical societies where they belong. The COVID-19 pandemic pushed all of us to think of new ways to provide care needed by hundreds of thousands of patients and their families who depend on us. By bringing education and training opportunities closer to cleft teams, we hope that we are able to empower medical professionals to continue to provide safe, high quality, and timely care to cleft-affected individuals all over the world. Thank you for the opportunity to share this with you. It is truly an honor.
Thank you to all the speakers that we've had this afternoon, all the panelists. My name is Deirdre Mangawang. I'm with RCSI, the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland, and I'm the Director of Operations at the Institute of Global Surgery here. It's my privilege to moderate a Q&A session at the moment. And just to say to all our participants, if you haven't been keeping an eye on the Q&A chat, I strongly advise you to have a quick dip in there because there's some very interesting questions that have come in, and our panelists have been answering them as we've gone throughout. There's one question that had just popped up and just caught my attention here, and I'd like to put it to all the panelists at the moment. This is from Emmett Cullen, and he's asked, in the opinion of the panel, will there be a role in surgery for 3D holographs in the education-informed consent of patients prior to their operation, in the training of future surgical trainees, and in guided training or supervision of remotely based surgeons in not easily accessible locations? I think that's just a really interesting question, having talked about the evolution of digital training from DVDs right up to where we are today. Would anybody like to take that question?
So Deirdre, I'm automatically thinking of Star Trek and the holograph deck. So I'm outing myself as a Trekkie. I think anything that helps the intervention be and feel and as realistic as possible is always an advantage. It just depends how long it takes for that technology to be really feasible. But when we look to see how quick all this new virtual reality technology is moving, I wouldn't be surprised if it's here very soon. Over.
Well, maybe to kind of on a sort of a similar tangent to that question, but just because a training course is available online or it's digital and it has all bells, whistles, fancy things, it doesn't necessarily mean that the educational content of the training is necessarily of high quality. And I suppose the question I had that came into me before this session was, do you think there's a risk that trainees might be drawn in by a delivery method, but ultimately might lose out educationally if there's no guarantee of quality? And again, that's for all the panel.
I think I can maybe start this one off. I think that there's always that risk. There's a huge risk with anything that we do if we aren't careful and intentional about the way that we design a curriculum or a program or whatever it is. That's a possibility. I think that we can see things like just increased cognitive load and learners who just can't learn because there's too many bells and whistles and too much to take in. I think that we can run the risk of all bells and whistles and no substantive content. I think that just like anything that we do, one of the things that attracted me to surgery early on was the fact that we look at outcomes and we're very honest about outcomes. And so I think that this is where honest evaluation of our outcomes is incredibly important, and just being honest with ourselves and willing to revise where revisions are appropriate, and willing to get rid of programs when we see that they're not working. But I think that that's a really important part of this whole thing.
I could add to that.
Yeah, please do.
Yeah, I agree, and especially when we move further and further away from the traditional ways of training and into more of the augmented reality, the virtual reality, holographs, and all those fancy spaces, which could also be cost prohibitive for low and middle income countries. And we have to be cognizant of the fact that no online or digital learning platform will replace, in the medical space at least, will replace the actual in-person training. So what these tools, because I see them as tools, do for us is to shorten the distance, to reduce the global space so that you're able to access people who would otherwise not be accessible to a trainee, but though they are used as resources that are adjunct to physical training, not in isolation, because we cannot lose the human touch as far as medical training is concerned.
Thank you, Dr. Esther. I think I have time for just one more question, because I am conscious of everybody is in different parts of the world, and we've committed to not going too much over the hour for this session. I wanted to ask, with digital training and online learning, it's such a collaborative process, and there's so many different parties being involved, from the people who develop the platform to the people who are presenting, and then the people who write the content and the content producers. Is there any question, or should there be a debate over who actually owns the training, and where that, what responsibility then the actual owner of the trainer has regarding making sure the quality is good or regular updating? I should have said that's for, if anybody wants to take that, that's fine.
I'm happy to take that, Deirdre. I think the importance is really of bodies like the Royal College of Surgeons to really give that leadership and endorsement of materials and techniques and curricula, such that we don't get lots of bespoke offers that look good but then don't follow through, and particularly linking those materials to actual accreditation processes. You're not doing this training just to make your CV look good. You're doing this training because you want to be a surgeon, and as Esther said, you want to be practicing that surgery and helping people. So linking the whole together, a full curriculum, good strong leadership of professional organizations to really endorse these materials. I think that's the key.
Could I add something, Deirdre? Do we have a second?
Sure.
I think that that's one of the important things, or one of the ways that we can additionally address this is through the use of the peer review process. So one of the things that we did with each of our modules is they were written by people within Sub-Saharan Africa, so they had context relevance and context specificity. But then every module is reviewed by 2 or 3 content experts who can check for quality and accuracy of the content. And I think that using a peer review process similar to what we do with textbooks, with papers that get published, is kind of an important component of this.
Okay, thank you very much, everyone, for that. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague Erica Flynn, who's here with me in RCSI. He's the Director of Education, Training and Research, and Eric is going to tell us a little bit about the United Nations Global Surgery Learning Hub.
Yeah, great. Let me just get my slides teed up. And thanks, Deirdre, for the introduction. And it's been a pleasure to be the tail end, I suppose, of a really interesting discussion here today. So as Deirdre said, I'm with the Institute of Global Surgery in the Royal College of Surgeons in Ireland. And we have, I suppose, a long involvement in e-learning for low and middle income country environments. We would work with partners to help them develop their content and develop learning management systems for their content. So we've worked with COSEXA, the West African College of Surgeons, the College of Anesthesiologists of East Central Southern Africa, College of Nursing of East Central Southern Africa, KISO, the World Health Organization, and I'm sure a number of others that I don't have on the tip of my tongue. I'm here for just a few minutes at the end of this presentation to bring the topic back around to what was introduced by Dr. Nikhil Seth at the very start of this program, the United Nations Global Surgery Learning Hub. This is a new project which we're very excited to be part of with the Global Surgery Foundation, UNITAR, ourselves and RCSI, and we think in the coming months and years, many more partners. First of all, the problem is quite simple, really, in one way. We've heard that there's a huge desire for high quality training material from all different cadres in the surgical workforce, not just surgeons, but across the surgical workforce, not just trainees in service as well. That need, that desire is there. And indeed, we've heard some fantastic examples of content today. And there is really good content out there. I'm not saying there is every content that is necessary, but there is a huge amount of excellent content out there, which is fragmented across many different platforms, and in many cases is underused. What we lack is the bridge between the learner and the content in many cases. And that's the problem that we're trying to solve with the United Nations Global Surgery Learning Hub. It's not myself or anyone else on this call who is setting e-learning really as a priority. These are national priorities laid out in the national surgical plans of many countries, and this is policy in a large number of countries. So we are responding to those low middle income country national needs. Give you a very quick flavor of what this hub is going to look like. We're in the very early stages of the project, and there's much that needs to be done to bring this to reality. But here's I suppose a quick image of what it's going to look like. This is a learning management system. The user arrives at the site, they log in and give some basic professional demographic detail, which allows us to target content specifically for the user. I'll come to the content in a moment. The courses will be categorized, and it'll also be possible for institutions to create bespoke groupings of courses that suits their curriculum, that suits their learners' needs. So they'll be able to guide, each institution will be able to guide its own learners through content in a specific way that works for their learning needs. The process of building this platform. I was delighted to hear the talk a moment ago about trust and quality assurance and indeed the peer review process. This is something we feel is very, very important. First of all, as of now, we're beginning an open consultative process. We want to hear from as many people as possible with an interest and with a professional interest in this area. about what is the best way to put together such a platform. What are the learning needs, and who exactly are the learners that we're trying to target? What is the best way to do so? So we're approaching this with a very open mind. We want to bring in interested institutions as partners, and we want to represent the broad number of different cadres involved in the delivery of surgical care, and also broad geographic representation. With a little image here of a leadership project advisory committee, a content committee, which is essentially a peer review committee, and a technical committee, which is looking at content to ensure it meets certain minimum technical requirements. Now, I've mentioned content a few times, but I haven't said where that's going to come from. Largely, the content is pre-existing. We're looking to curate content with the peer review group I've mentioned, and also the technical group, to ensure that it is of high quality, and then it'll be placed on the platform. This is going to be a single place for people to go to find global surgery educational content that they can feel assured that it is trusted, it's of a high quality, easy to access, all presented in a very easy to use format. Importantly, for institutions that get involved with this platform, they will be able to receive information on their trainees, their progress through the courses, feedback, usage data, etc. So finally, I know we're a little bit over time, a call to action. This will be an endeavor of the entire global surgical community, or else it won't succeed. So we really want people to get involved. Please do register your interest now at the link below. I think we can put that link in the chat box in a moment. We want to hear from you. If you think you may be able to provide content, if you think this may be of use to your learners and your institutions, reach out to us. As a collaborative group, we'll build this platform together. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you so much, Eric. I'd like to firstly thank all of our panelists here today for taking the time for such wonderful and engaging presentations. I really learned a lot. And also our chat seemed to have learned a lot. Lots of interesting questions, which is great to have them engaged. And I just wanted to say to our participants that we'll be happy to facilitate any kind of connections. I know not all questions were answered, so please feel free to send us an email, and then we can put you in touch with some of our panelists where appropriate. So I just wanted to take the opportunity to thank you all. The recording will be available in the next week or so. And thank you for your time. I hope you learned something as well. Take care, everybody, and goodbye.